Moment. Hey,
We're
here we
live.
are. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to Craft Talk Book Club. We're so happy to have you here with us. Please, if you're here, let us know in the chat. Say hello, share your name and where you're from. If we haven't met yet, I'm Nicole, and this is my lovely co-host, Mary. Hello, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Here's our book for today. We're
Here's
so
my
excited to
version.
talk about this book.
I've got this version.
What
Do
is
you love
that
it?
version?
It's a soft cover.
Is
What do you
that the
have?
version? Is that the Canadian version or just the paperback version?
Perhaps it is.
I love that cover.
It is quite lovely. I
I
was going
love
to
that
ask you,
cover.
Mary, before we get going here and are waiting for people to join us, I'm sure you noticed this. Have you ever read Sons and Lovers, D.H. Lawrence?
No, I know she references it in this book.
Yeah, I thought, okay, there's stuff going on with the title in Sons and
Me
Lovers.
too.
But I haven't read it, so I wasn't able to really say too much about
I
that.
haven't read it either. And it's funny because I actually was curious. I thought there may be some kind of piece on that or interview, and I Googled it and I didn't find anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even you and I both picked up on that, but I didn't find anything on the internet about it. The only thing I found on the internet about the title was she was asked why she used an ampersand, and she said she just likes ampersands,
Oh,
which is a
okay.
great
I wondered
answer.
that myself. Well, we can do some further investigation.
Yeah.
Maybe read Sons and Lovers. Hello, Robin. Hello, Britt, and hello, Krista. So glad to have you.
Yeah, if you're just arriving, please chime in the chat so we can see you're here and let us know where you're calling in from. Should we start with our icebreakers, Nicole?
Always. We should always start with our icebreakers. So our first one, Mary and I are both into personality type stuff. And how many of you are familiar with Briggs-Meyer? Do you know your Briggs-Meyer personality type? Anyone? Hi, Harrison. Hi, Julia. All the way from Oxford, England. And hello, Sue-Ann.
Hi, Sue-Ann.
Barb and Dick are from Panama. Amazing.
Yeah, what is your Myers-Briggs? I thought it was Myers-Briggs. Is it Briggs-Myers?
Briggs-Myers. I'm not sure, but Mary and I are very close.
Another one.
Oh, yeah. We've got an ENTJ. Hi, Julie. I am an INFP. ENFP.
And I am an INFJ. We have an ENTJ and
another INFJ. The last time I had a conversation around introversion was with my other writing group that I run on Wednesday nights, and everybody raised their hand and said they were introverts. So I was really curious. We'd have a few extroverts here too.
Yeah, I am a little like I think I always assume that writers are introverts, but clearly that's not true, which is good. Mm-hmm. We have a variety. All right, next question. It's a hard one. Coffee or tea?
Coffee or tea? Mary, what's your answer to that question?
Absolutely coffee.
Ah, okay. Hi, Margaret. Nice to see you. Oh, a social introvert. I totally relate to that, Sue-Ann. I was actually just thinking those words myself. Social introvert. You said coffee all the way?
Yeah, I like a certain lavender tea that I make sometimes in the evenings these days, but for the most part, coffee is what I look forward to. Coffee is what I kind of get obsessed with, and order the expensive kinds and try different, all that stuff is kind of what I get into. How about you?
I love a good cappuccino, and I do drink coffee every morning. I have to moderate the caffeine a little bit, but I don't know if I told you this, Mary. We're going to do high tea next week. So my daughter and I picked out a really lovely English afternoon tea to try out. So
have you done that before, or is this the first time?
Oh, we're into the Great Canadian Baking Show, and they did high tea. So we want to do that ourselves.
That is adorable. I can't wait to hear about it. Coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon, coffee and tea. Yeah, exactly like coffee. I'm into that. Coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon. Okay, great. And last question, Nicole, you want to ask it?
Yes, I do. Ocean or mountains, friends? I'm very fortunate to live very close to the ocean. I wouldn't choose to live anywhere else. I love it. How about you, Mary?
I wish I lived close to the ocean. I also love the ocean. Ocean for sure. Mountains are beautiful, but I would go to the ocean any day that I could. We're really into the binary questions today. So.
Yeah, exactly. We were just talking about divisiveness.
Nice and simple.
Yeah. It's not like that.
Or
We've got like a full-on ocean
things.
from Meryl. I love it. Like all caps. Sue-Ann, we're so lucky we live near the mountains and the ocean.
Yes, you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. Well, we welcome if this is your first time here. We're so thrilled to have you. We started Craft Talk Book Club a few months ago. January was our first meeting. So this is just our third meeting. And we meet to discuss craft choices that authors are making in contemporary novels and memoirs that we love. So we love to nerd out and dive into the specific craft choices that these authors are making so that we can learn from them. And I'm going to give Nicole's quick bio. Nicole Breit is an award-winning essayist, poet, and writing instructor based on Canada's Sunshine Coast, which I also love the name of. Every time I say it, makes me happy. Her work is widely published in print and online journals, and her essay, An Atmospheric Pressure, was selected as a notable essay by the editors of Best American Essays, 2017. She's the creator of Spark Your Story, a series of online programs for life writers that helps writers get experimental with structure and master the foundations of storycraft.
Thank you so much, Mary. And it is my pleasure to introduce the fabulous Mary Adkins. Mary Adkins is the author of the novels When You Read This, Indie Next Pick and Best Book of 2019 by Good Housekeeping, and Privilege, a New York Post Best Book of the Week and Today.com Best Summer Read. Her novel, Palm Beach, will be out in August. I'm very excited about this. Her books have been published in 13 countries, and her next novel, did I already say that? Her next novel
I think it might be in there twice.
Oh, okay.
2 mentions, why not?
Her essays and reporting have appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, Slate, and more. She teaches storytelling for the Moth worldwide and creative writing both online and in her hometown of Nashville. And today, Mary's going to begin our discussion. I'm really excited about it, writers and lovers. And I'd like to start with a quote from the book. How does a man in Mississippi in the 1920s create a character who feels more alive to a waitress in 1997, remembered with more tenderness than most of the boys she's ever known? And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Mary.
And that is the question, right? Okay, I wanted to start out with something a little bit different today. I am curious to hear in the chat just your ranking of this book, and here's the scale. Dislike, like, strongly like, or love. Dislike, like, strongly like, or love. Give people a moment to chime in. Great, coming in, getting some answers. So we have a few likes. Strongly like, okay. A few strongly likes came in all at once. Strongly like or love. Okay, my next question. Did that opinion change over the course of reading the novel? In other words, if I had asked you this question after you'd only read the first 30 pages or so, would you have answered the same way you just did? Or would you have answered differently? Britt
Mhm.
says, yes, thought it started kind of slow. Julia liked it more the more I read. Yeah, Julie didn't like it at
Mhm.
first.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Nicole and I relate to those of you who are saying it took a while to warm up to. And I would love to hear why you think that is. If you don't mind sharing in the chat, what was it about the beginning that felt slow, if it did? And if it didn't, great, share that too. We want to hear. Sue Ann says, I started out curious and began to hang on to her words, wondering where she was taking me.
Mm.
Robin says it didn't get interesting until Oscar. Robin, I think I said that exact sentence to Nicole.
We also talked about the first 30 pages, Mary, and Robin mentioned that too.
Yeah. Yeah, Sue Ann says there was a lot of this is my normal life before she got into the twists and turns.
Mhm. It felt like the longest day ever. I think that first, when it opens, we go through
Oh,
one whole day and it's
yeah. And then Robin says, but then I hated Oscar. Robin, when did you start hating Oscar? Can you give me a rough estimation of page number? Wendy says it didn't feel slow because we had servers in the family and could relate to it. Okay, you're right. So you like the service industry aspect. Amanda says she shifted back and forth in time with backstory, which I believe slowed it down a bit, like she was downshifting in a standard car. I like that analogy. Her meditations on grief and women/men made me think, and she described them so beautifully. Nice. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people describe it that way. Even the beginning of the book, it's really interesting. Calista says, I didn't find her appealing. She was so labored with her depression and sadness. That was kind of my feeling about it too, honestly. And I think it's interesting when talking to people about the beginning of this book, I think we're kind of falling into two camps. There are people who are like, I liked it from the beginning. And then there are some of us who are like, ooh, the beginning was really slow for me. It was hard. Julia says, I was struggling to see where she was going at first. Yeah, I think so. So one interesting thing I wanted to talk about with this particular book is how the experience of reading, I think, whether intentional or not, and I'm guessing it was intentional. I think Lily King creates a reading experience that parallels Casey's experience in the novel. In that when we meet Casey, she's grieving. She feels kind of dead and numb inside, right? How would you describe, you just did beautifully, Nicole. Like it feels like one long day, but can you talk a little bit more about like what the beginning of the book felt like to you? Cause I feel like when we
yeah, we
chatted about it, I like how you describe it.
I felt like an outsider for a long time and like a stranger coming into this immersive situation where there's so much clamor when she gets to work and we meet all of these different characters. I don't even know how many names I wrote down, but all of the staff and these people. And I felt like the description was a little bit thin and so kind of ghostly, actually. I couldn't get a hold on who was who at first. And I just felt like I was, in this really thin world and
Mm-hmm.
getting through one long, exhausting day.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was an outsider, and I think that mirrored her experience a little bit too in the first part where I don't know if you and I talked about this, Mary, but when she goes with Luke to his friends, and she says, I feel like they don't want me here and I don't know why. So she feels like an outsider in this world too. So I
Yeah.
just sort of had that feeling more than once. And
Yeah.
we were supposed to, I thought with literature and stories, we're supposed to be immersed in a way that we feel really close and engaged, but I didn't feel that way. I felt really disconnected for the first part.
I love that. And I think, isn't there a moment at when she goes with Luke to the friend's house where she gets the feeling that he's brought like a number of people there and told the same stories, and she's the only one who hasn't heard the story? And do you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm. Yeah, he's telling a story again to his friends who are, enjoying it, even though she can tell they've heard it a number of times. So yeah, I didn't pick up on that, but yeah, they've probably heard it. Perhaps they've heard it a number of times because he's brought other women there. That's what
Women
I,
there. Oh yeah,
yeah,
actually, I think
yeah.
I must have just been assuming that. But yeah,
Mhm.
even that felt removed. And that scene actually, I think, and this is something a little tangential, but I think she does such a good job of describing. I don't know that I've ever read anyone do this well, describing like the nuances of a particular kind of dating experience, like that, like when you're with someone and you can tell that that person has told this story to everyone else and they're just humoring them, and
Mhm.
it's really kind of performing for your benefit. Like that's such a specific thing that she captures,
Mhm.
and I think she does that a number of times.
Mhm.
Like what that dynamic is between Casey and these three men, right? Because I had forgotten about Luke until you sent me that message last night. Will you also say what you said about the three men?
Oh, and I was going to build on that a little bit later too, because I was thinking about how this story takes place in 1997, and we saw Princess Diana's wedding with her mom, and that there's a fairy tale princess romantic story here that she's, you know, playing out. And she has three Prince Charmings, and they're all wounded in a similar way, grieving a loss while she's grieving this loss. And I was thinking of, one's too hot, one's too cold, and one is just right. But it takes the length of the book to get to that point to discover which one is the right one. So
Yeah, and I had just sort of forgotten about Luke. Is his name Luke? The first guy?
yeah, Luke.
Yeah. I'd kind of forgotten about Luke by the end because he just has that kind of cameo at the beginning. But you're right,
Mhm.
he's grieving the loss of his child. But it's completely in a way that it's sort of performative. It is performative. I mean, he literally
Mhm.
performs the poem that he wrote,
Yeah, it's
and
very. Mhm.
like draws on Casey. He draws on Casey emotionally, but is not at all giving to Casey.
Mhm. There's that moment where he produces all of these poems, and then just before Red Barn ends, he says, "I wrote this all for you," but he can't actually give her anything. He's sort of using her inspiration or her presence or this experience with
Yeah.
her.
And doesn't even mention her in the reading, right? Like
Mhm.
even the poem he wrote for her and about her, he says he wrote it for his mom,
Mhm.
which is another great little moment. There are just these kind of moments that she throws in that are incredible. Okay, there's so much happening in the chat, so let's consult this really quickly. Um, I believe King was trying to give the readers that perspective. Um, oh, right. Thank you, Brenda. You don't figure out until, oh yeah, Robin, you don't figure out until halfway through the 1997 thing. Yeah, I didn't realize it was in the 90s until a little ways in as well. Um, yeah, all the characters are sort of grieving. Um, and he changed it in front of the audience, right? So I think I found it fascinating how my experience seemed to sort of track Casey's, because by the time Oscar and his children show up at that restaurant, I I was not into this book. I'm going to be honest, I was not into the book. I was like, I got it. The writing was good. It was neat. It was tidy. It was tight. But I just really wanted to feel something. And Casey felt so dead to me because she was grieving and she was dead. And then Oscar and his little boy show up. There was one moment before that, actually, with the a cappella group. I did love the a cappella group's performance because it was funny and full of life. And it was like maybe that was like a glimpse of Casey almost waking up with this a cappella group. But then the little boy shows up and wants to pay for his dad's breakfast because it's his birthday. And I just completely fell in love with them. And it was like I thought, oh my gosh, if this is the love interest, I now understand why people love this book, because I really want Casey to wind up with this dude. And then, yeah, and then she, you know, we move along and we have Silas. And I don't like Silas because he disappeared. I did not like Silas at first because he disappeared and said he just needed to get away. And he did seem to be hot and cold in the way that Oscar was not. I really loved Oscar at first. And I was rooting for Oscar. And when she went on the date with Silas, I thought, I don't want them to run into Oscar because Oscar's going to be hurt. And I just, all of a sudden, I was invested. Interesting. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat here. The kids make her come alive and we start to like her now. Right. Yeah, exactly. And what I think is, so one thing I wanted to point out, because this is Craft Talk Book Club, right? We're talking about craft. I just want to read aloud a couple of different excerpts. Yeah, we're going to get to that, Robin. We're going to get to the turn of Oscar. But just looking kind of at the first half of the book now, I want to read a couple of different excerpts and talk about the difference in them, prose-wise, okay? So this is just the beginning of the book, the opening paragraph of the book. I have a pact with myself not to think about money in the morning. I'm like a teenager trying to not think about sex, but I'm also trying to not to think about sex or Luke or death, which means not thinking about my mother who died on vacation last winter. There are so many things I can't think about in order to write in the morning. Okay, so that's the opening paragraph. Now I want to read you a paragraph from that scene where Oscar and his children come into the restaurant. I approach Oscar from behind so the boys can watch. John keeps his smile trimmed, but when Jasper sees the sparks flying in all directions, he starts giggling and pounding his feet. Oh no, Oscar says, turning. No singing, please no singing, he says. But his boys and I start, and the people beside them, and then the two crocs at table 4 who are eating with their parents, and Tony and Craig and Gory, and pretty much everyone else joins in. Oscar glowers at me, and I can't tell if his kids are singing or laughing too hard. Afterward, everyone claps, and Oscar tries to blow out the sparkler, but has to wait till it blazes down the stick. So what do you notice about the difference in the writing itself in those two excerpts? We have our slight delay.
Mm-hmm. So much great chat, though.
Yeah,
lots of interaction in the comments. It's great to see.
Did anyone notice anything about the difference? There's one thing that I noticed that just jumped out at me, and I went back to see if it was really true and thought, I think maybe that is true. Oh, nice. I like that, Britt. Wow, you all are noticing something else than I did. So Britt says she shifts from focus on Casey to focus on other people. I love that, Britt. That's really good. It's like looking inward to looking outward. And what I noticed, yeah, the internal focus to external focus for sure. I also noticed literally that the sentence structure. It's simple. She moves from simple short sentences to more variation, to longer sentences that just have more, they're outward looking, longer, meandering sentences. Not even longer. They're long sentences with multiple clauses. Like there's almost so much happening around Casey that she has to pack all of it into a sentence because there's life now around her and she's taking it in, and the crocs at table 4 are singing, and John is doing, the little boy John is doing this, and Jasper's doing this, and all of it's happening and it's bubbling out in her sentence. It feels more animated. Yeah, I really noticed that, and I thought it was so interesting to notice and cool to notice. And it's when I started to think, oh, Lily King knows exactly what she's doing, like, I think you pointed out, Nicole, that line, that quote that we read at the beginning of the hour here about where Casey acknowledges like what a well-written character feels like.
I actually have the quote written down here. It's when she's doing her teacher interview that she thinks she's bombed. And she's asked how she would do it differently in her English class. And she says, I would want to talk and write about how the book makes them feel, what it reminded them of, if it changed their thoughts about anything. You want to push them further in so they can feel everything the author tried so hard to create for them. An author is trying to give you an immersive adventure.
Yeah. So Casey knows, which means Lily King knows, right? Which means when we weren't, for those of us who were not feeling that with Casey at the beginning, that was intentional. Had to be I mean, I think it was intentional because she clearly can write an immersive character because these characters become that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Calista says, I started pulling for her at that point. Yeah, me too. It's when she won me over. When she was sweet to those kids was when she won me over. Oh, nice, Amanda. And King gives us a heads up about Oscar's character because she says he glowered. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like a little bit of foreshadowing there to actually glower. At this point, I was still I think I wasn't quite sure what to make of Oscar. I thought of him as sort of a grumpy, sad widower. And I think I felt bad for him probably, which overshadowed any critical feelings at this point.
I think she does a good job of creating that complexity. Like there are these little dropped hints when you go back all along that show a little bit about who the characters are, but there's other things happening in the scene. He looks like a pretty good dad. He's kind of adorable. He insists on, trying to pay, not let this waitress get away with paying for most of the meal. He does a lot of the right things.
Yeah. And then he does that adorable thing when he writes her the note and crosses things out. The crossing of things out is what wins her over and what won me over. Like it was such a humble thing to do, that self-conscious thing to do. So, okay, before we turn to a slightly different topic, I just want to make that note that sentence structure, length, and variation can do a lot of your work for you, just like it does with her. And I think it could be interesting to look back for yourself and see, like, in the places where it did feel like Casey was really keeping us at a distance, and we didn't feel connected to her. What were the actual like grammatic and structural choices that Lily King was making in those moments versus the scenes that feel warm, where we're really connecting. Okay, Sue Ann says, I loved how much value add this book contributes to us writers in the readings, the interview, etc. You mean like the writing world that's in the novel? Is that what you mean? Because I wanted to talk about that as well. Sorry, reading through. Oscar writing Alice and Silas's book. Yes.
We talked about that.
We did talk about that. I had missed that. When I read, and Nicole pointed that out to me.
I like how they were getting, Silas and Casey were getting to know each other and were really like kind of bantering nicely at that time, and then it kind of gets eclipsed, but you can tell they've got a little vibe going at the beginning.
Yeah, it's good chemistry at that event. Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. What Suzanne is bringing up, the lessons the writers give the students. So there's a lot in this book about the writing life, about the writing world, about publishing, what Casey feels about being a writer, how hard it is for her to write, how nervous she gets around other writers. Yeah, great. People are already starting to share on that. This is exactly what I want to hear. Did you relate to her experience of being a writer? What did you relate to? What did you not relate to? What did you think was well done? What about you, Nicole? Did you relate to Casey's experience?
Not the first read through, but when I read through a little more carefully the second time, I liked how she wrote about the struggle of being stuck and finding your way out and
Hmm.
how it's not this linear process. I could relate to that. But the world she's living in, not so much.
So no, why not the first time? That's interesting. What do you think?
I don't know, maybe because at the beginning I was a little disconnected and I think I missed some of it, perhaps.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
was really focused on the relationships. I really felt like that was the foreground, what was the story that was in the foreground.
Yeah.
Sort of connective, a bit of connective tissue to the main story that I saw that I was interested in. So I think that could have been it. How
Yeah.
about you, Mary? How did you relate or not relate to her as a writer and her world?
I think I was defensive. I think I was judgmental of her struggle at the beginning in a way that is revealing about me. Like
Mm.
I think I was frustrated with her for not just writing, and maybe because um it felt very real and that scared me a little bit, like,
Mhm.
it's like she's grieving and she therefore can't write. And so I felt really invested in that, like, okay, come on, Casey, I just need you to get it together. Like, I need you to write. I felt that feeling, like
Mm.
frustration with her for not writing.
Mm.
Um, okay, so just catching up on the chat here. Yeah, I think the writers were kind of horrid. Yeah, they really were. They were not presented in a positive light. Um, I think the grief subsumed her world and the writing. Yeah, like clearly that was really it was overshadowing everything. And there, I mean, actually, that's what in the chapter where she mentions the DH Lawrence. I'm looking on page 86 of this copy. I'm not sure if you have a different copy, like Nicole, but on maybe 86 is the same. That's the chapter where she's like, I went to the library to research Cuba, and I just end up reading about writers and their dead mothers. And that's where she talks about D.H. Lawrence's novel
Mhm.
Sons and Lovers, and his experience of writing a novel as his mom was dying. So yeah, I think she makes pretty clear, like, the grief is really, it's literally taking over her writing, because when she goes to the library to research, it's the only thing she reads about is like writers who have lost their moms. Um, okay, and then moving through, we got so little about her novel subject. I wanted to know more about it. We really did. That's so interesting. We got so little about her novel subject. That's such a good point, Sue Ann. I had not thought about that. There are novels about writers. The resurrection of, anyone know what this one? Um, Joan Ashby, maybe it's called The Resurrection of Joan Ashby. Did I get that title right? I did. Yay, me. The Resurrection of Joan Ashby came out several years ago, and it is a novel about a writer. And she goes to the opposite extreme. So in that novel, all of the writer's short stories, the full short stories, are in the novel. And to me, reading at the time, that felt like too much. I was like, I don't need every single one of this person's short stories. But yeah, but maybe here, interesting. We know very little about Casey's book. Casey's book exists as just this. We know it's set in Cuba, and we know there are a bunch of jokes about her writing the great American novel, but we don't get much detail about it at all. And then, yeah, she seems to make a big jump from struggling to finishing her book. Right. So where does she, anyone remember when she does finish it, what's happening in her life? Like, she goes from struggling to actually being able to write. And what is happening in her life when she is able to write? Anyone remember? I'm looking myself here. Let's see. I mean, she's definitely like dating. Yeah.
I
She's
think
spent
she
with a
actually
boy. Go ahead, Nicole.
I think she actually references that these two men have energized her
Oh,
writing.
she
But
does? I didn't remember that.
I can't remember the exact line.
Oh, it's coming back. You're right. I remember now. She does say that at some point, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and she gets fired. Like there's a lot happening. Things are happening in her life. Right, she's done by I'm at page 180 and she's done by then. Anyway, yeah, it's like there's one point where she says, and Muriel loves her book so much. So she's not actually done work quite before then. So it is interesting how she goes from like really struggling to suddenly being, having a draft, and then comes the agent pitching process, which is its own thing. I love the postal worker. Their exchanges were a nice little detail. Nice, Amanda. Thank God for Muriel. Yeah. Let's see. I don't think
one
that
of
is
the
a great
postal
role model.
workers say, I hope the next 6 years of your life are more exciting or something like that?
Yes. Yes, I forgot about that line. That's such a good line.
6 years of my life on this.
Yeah, I also really liked her friendship with Mariel. And I also thought it was cool. If you go to page of my copy, it's 224. It's when she keeps getting all of these. My camera's flipped, so I don't know which way to move my book. Okay. It's when she's getting all of those emails. And I put just beginnings. Perfect. When she's getting all of the rejection emails. And I loved how she just put Lily King just put the beginnings of the emails. While we admire the scope of, we are grateful for the look at, your project did not strike a chord. This is not quite right for, unfortunately, at this time we aren't. Because it really, to me, that really mimicked the experience of getting a rejection when you just read the first 5 words, right? Like you read the first 5 words and you feel sad because you don't need to read more. And maybe you actually open it and read it, but you didn't need to. So I thought that was such a fun example of like an efficient way to convey an experience, and a reminder that like if you are trying to capture a certain experience, I think it can sometimes be helpful to step back and think like, what do I actually do in this moment? Because I bet that's what Lily King did, whether she was like consciously thinking of it or subconsciously. She was like, oh, no one even reads past the first 5 words, so I'm just going to stop here.
Mary, we've got a good
Amanda.
question from Amy.
Oh, go ahead. From Amy?
Amy has a question. Do you think these shifts were necessary to propel her forward in writing, because she is one of those writers so afraid of writing bad pages that she waits for inspiration?
I don't know. What do others think? It seemed like she did try to write every morning. Like she sat down to do it, right? Like she would walk Adam's dog.
Yeah, and preserve her job waitressing because it gave her those mornings.
Yeah. I think we didn't spend a lot of time with her while she was writing, but I got the impression she was pretty consistent. Quill says, I loved that, or Brenda, as I have received everyone back when I was writing. I loved that, as I have received everyone. Oh, back when you were writing for magazines. Yeah, like those just beginnings of emails. Yeah, Amy, she didn't want to move on to the next book, right? Yeah, she didn't want to leave the characters she had spent time with. So, okay, to wrap up our discussion of, because there's one more really big thing I want to talk about, but to wrap up our discussion of the writing world, I really took from this that Casey's idealization of a writer's life and the way that she, would notice the writers in the room at an event, be like, she's sold this many stories, and she, like, I met her at this event, and she would get really nervous when she met them when she waited on them at the restaurant, and would get paralyzed and ask Mary Hand to cover those tables. I think that whole phenomenon to me served in contrast to her actual writing, in the way that I think idealizing being a successful writer does. Like that, it can paralyze us. It becomes a form of resistance, because when you become obsessed with the idea of being a writer, it can stop you from actually being a writer, because your perfectionism takes hold, and your sense of inadequacy, or your fraud syndrome. And I thought that we saw that. I think we saw that on display with Casey. Because those parts. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Another way of being an outsider, and those parts, I think Lily King did a great job of making those parts all about Casey, not about the right. Like when she described how successful those writers were, I was not getting, I need to know how successful this writer is as the reader. That didn't matter at all. What mattered is Casey felt inadequate around this person. Like that's what I think I was supposed to be getting, and what I was getting. Jan says, I wondered when King wrote this book, whether a version of it was written before her others. That's interesting. Why do you wonder that, Jan? I'm curious. Okay, now let's get to the good. Let's get to the good stuff. Robin, you're going to be happy about this, because you're ready for us to turn on Oscar. Did other people's experience of Oscar evolve? Because mine did, and Nicole, yours did, right? Like I started liking him a lot, and then I really didn't like him, for her at least. I really didn't like him for her by the end. That my perception of Oscar as a person, and as a person Casey was in a relationship, evolved dramatically between his entry onto the scene and their moment of breakup. And I'm curious if others also experienced that. Robin, you've said the word mean a lot. He was mean to her. I like that you're really cutting right to it.
Mary, Amanda, you was a jerk from the get-go.
That's what Amanda says. I was suspicious of Oscar from the beginning. Interesting.
I feel like
so did Amy. Me too. Oh my gosh.
You know where? Did I tell you where? I mean, there were so many little pieces that contributed to the turn that things took, but I thought it was kind of cute and charming that he was saying things like, my mother thinks you're going to break my heart. And then it got so gross. He kept bringing up his mother. I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not appealing.
Yeah, I'm so curious that no one liked him. Okay, so Britt is with us. Curious at first. Julia, you thought he was patronizing from the start. Wow, that's so interesting. I did not find him patronizing at the start. I found him pretty charming at the beginning. I found him to be a nervous guy who had not dated in a long time, and was maybe like a particular kind of grump. But I didn't find him super patronizing until he was pretty explicitly that way. But it sounds like others found him that way earlier, which is cool that you picked up on that.
Marion says, description of, sorry to interrupt, but the description of how he ran the workshop gave her the creeps. I remember Silas calling it a bit cultish.
Yeah. And him not saying anything. Agreed. I agree with you on that. I think I was giving him the benefit of the doubt that he was like a grieving, sad man. Bicycle helmet upset me, says Julia. Oh, the bicycle helmet. I can see that going that direction. It's like, is it charming or is it patronizing? Amy says, I did not. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think I remember when he gave her the bicycle helmet, he said, I'm going to buy you lots more nice things or something like that.
He did.
I was like,
I'll buy you nicer things.
Yeah,
I'll buy you nicer things. Amy says, I didn't find him patronizing, but I did see signs of insecurity, which others saw sympathetic because of his wife. I can see how he's seen differently. Oh, Sue Ann, that's good. Is he the dad Casey always wanted?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think even, I think, did others feel this way? I felt like King really held back on what Casey saw in Oscar. You know, it was like, that was kind of left unspoken. Am I wrong about that? Like what Casey exactly saw in Oscar? We know she was really attracted to Silas. Like she was very clear about that, right? She was like
Mhm.
physically attracted to Silas. They had chemistry. With Oscar, she wanted a family. She did say that. She said she had a problem getting hooked on other families. And
Mhm.
then we would see her. It was a good example, maybe a pretty extreme showing, not telling. Like we would see her interacting with the family and the boys. And she would need, like when Oscar came home from that trip, which we should also talk about, by the way, Nicole and I talked about that choice of his, to like not pay her when he was going to hire someone else. But when he came home from that trip and didn't talk to her, and she says that I like, it became unbearable that he wasn't looking at me or talking to me. But that's different than having sincere romantic feelings toward him. Nice, Sue Ann. Yeah, in terms, it's almost supposed to be a given. Like Sue Ann says, in terms of notable author and he's interested in her, that's very attractive. It's like one of the, like when someone is of a certain type, it's like, if Matthew McConaughey has a crush on you, you're just supposed to obviously reciprocate. and this man seemed to hold that status in the community. Like he's just the kind of person who, if he's willing to date you, why wouldn't you date him, kind of thing. I think King did a good job modeling men and how they treat us. Sorry if they're in this group. Yeah, she really captures a certain kind of like misogynistic dynamic, I think, really well. Yes, thank you. She says she thought he was cuter than Kevin Costner. I do remember that. Yeah. That's interesting too, though, because even that is at arm's length. I mean,
Mhm.
because that's like comparing someone to a movie star who you would never
Yeah,
meet.
being a little starstruck.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. My next question was going to be where does Oscar turn for you? But for most people here, there was no turn. You just saw it coming. Where did he turn for you, Nicole? Do you remember?
I think the mother comment, I think there was a hint, and I think it was was it Muriel who said, have you read any of his work? There's lots of sex scenes. He uses the word sour. I was like, well, that's kind of weird.
I forgot about that. I overlooked that because it bothered me. Yeah,
Mhm.
you're right.
I
That
will
was pretty heavy foreshadowing.
Yeah. But when you want to give someone a chance, you see those hints and you're like, well, they haven't shown us that yet. So that's through her filter. So let's just give it a little more time. I think.
Yeah, yeah. That's such a good point. Um, the toothbrushing, the sex scene, that's what people are
Oh,
bringing up. Yeah. Oof, that was a brutal sex scene. Sometimes in my writing group, in my writing community, we talk about, or once or twice, we've talked about how to write a good sex scene. And I wrote in the margins of this book that this was a well-written sex scene, like in
mhm.
a cringy way,
It was
and
unbearable.
it was unbearable. And maybe it's easier to write a cringy sex scene than a good sex scene. I don't know.
Mhm.
But she definitely nailed it.
Mhm.
Um, when he asked Casey to look after his kids while he went away for a professional event, says Shelley. Yeah, and remember he laughed when she asked if she would get paid. And he knew she was a waitress um, who was struggling, and he still laughed that she wanted to get paid and then said, well, you get to move in. That was a turning point for me. That was a turning point for me. Um, Amy says, I loved that element of the story. Casey made a point of separating the writer from the person, not something I've thought about much.
Mhm.
Um, Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting, Amy. I think the other moment where, and we're all writers here, and so maybe others felt the same way.
Mhm.
When someone asked, I think it's that woman whose name I forget, Virginia, or the other author who has the co-reading with him, who he's jealous of. When she asks if Oscar has read Casey's book, and he says she won't let me near it, which is a lie because he hasn't asked. I was
Mhm.
done. I was done with him then.
Mhm.
That was, yeah.
Yeah. Calista, he did promise her 200 a night, but we never see him pay her. I was waiting for him to get back and give her the money, and we never see him give her the money.
Which feels intentional to me.
Mhm.
Because he leaves that poem that says, never leave. Which is also kind of cute. I mean, that's what she does so well, like the complexity of all of it. Like, it's
Mhm.
kind of cute, but is it, didn't he leave the check when she arrived? Did he?
I'll have to read
I don't
back.
remember that.
I don't remember.
Oh, he did leave a check. Okay. Well, anyway, a couple of people remember him leaving a
Oh,
check. Okay.
okay. My mistake.
Got it. He did. But yeah, not reading her book, on the fridge. Okay. Gotcha. Not reading her book was a turning point for me. Let me see. What were the other ones? I wrote down a couple of them. Oh, um, okay, this scene, another good example of like you can't quite pinpoint what it is about it, but when she has that conversation with the agent and she's excited about the agent, right? Like she has an agent who's super excited about her, and this woman is like, she has notes, but she's like, I'm going to do this for you. I love your book. And it's just a great moment. It's like a writer's dream moment. And when she tells Oscar about it and the fact that she didn't take notes, so she can't remember what the agent's notes were, he says, agents are full of it. It must not have been memorable or you would have written it down, which sounds like it's supportive, but it's not. Like, right? Like it's not supportive because she's excited about this agent. Things he's missing. She's excited
Mhm.
about this agent. She wants to implement these notes. She
Mhm.
thought the notes were smart notes, and this is her shot. And I
Mhm.
think what I pulled from that was that he's threatened. Like, right? Because he hasn't read this. He also hasn't read this book. And he feels confident weighing in on whether someone else's notes who has read this book are good or not.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Robin says jealousy. That moment for sure. And then of course, then there's that great moment where it seals the deal, where he says, "I'll
Mhm.
never kiss lips that young again,"
Mhm.
which seems to confirm, you know, his kind of objectification of her, even if it wasn't conscious, he was
Mhm.
objectifying her. Um, Oh yeah, and then he says she sounds like a menopausal old lady, right? His misogyny just kind of
Mhm.
drips out. Um, One thing we also very threatened by Silas, who he says lives on another planet. We absolutely have not talked about that brutal. We have not talked about that brutal scene with her father and stepmother when they come to dinner. Don't tip her and try to get her mother's ring. Man, talk about a cruel scene. Um, I'm just reading. He must be, yeah, he's threatened. He must be king of the mountain. Okay, so last couple of things we want to talk about here. We can move along. So one thing I wanted to challenge us to do, although again, Nicole and I and Brett, maybe just three of us felt this way, but I think it can be an interesting challenge to think about changing a reader's perception of a character over the course of a story. So you have your character arc. I think usually when we say character arc, we mean a character's conscious arc. Like I used to believe that I wasn't worthy of love, and now I believe I am worthy of love. Like there's a conscious movement from point A to point B that the character is aware of. This is a different kind of arc. It would be an arc in the reader's perception of a character. So even if you didn't agree with this about Oscar, you can imagine it as an example, like Nicole and I felt that we felt one way about this character at the beginning, and then by the end we felt a different way about him. And that can be a cool thing to try to play with. Like the reader's perception of a character at the beginning of a story, toying with that by dropping more and more information that slowly shapes that perception into something different by the end of the story. Okay, and then let's just hear, did people have a favorite passage or quote? Or did Lily King make a particular craft choice that we haven't talked about that you liked and would want to incorporate into your own writing? Please share in the chat either of those things. A passage that you really like, or a craft choice she makes, or something she does structurally, or really anything you like that she does that you would want to experiment with in your own writing. Could also just share a favorite passage. Nicole, while we're waiting, did you have a favorite quote or passage to share?
Yeah, I had one right at the beginning when she's talking about, she describes grief really well and embodies grief really well. So I just wanted to share this one. But right on the heels of that feeling, that suspicion that all is not yet lost, comes the urge to tell my mother, tell her that I am okay today, that I have felt something close to happiness, that I might still be capable of feeling happy. She will want to know that, but I can't tell her. That's the wall I always slam into on a good morning like this. My mother will be worrying about me, and I can't tell her that I'm okay. Just
that gave me chills.
Gorgeous sentences, and that feeling of, the one person that you want to tell something to and you just can't. It's so lovely.
Yeah, that's really lovely. Lena says, I liked the revelation about the dog being female. I don't know why, like, things aren't always what they seem. That's why, Lena. I think that's why. Like, because, hold on, I'm looking for it. She has this line in here about writing. Hold on, let's see if I can find it. And it's something like, most writers can either write a slice of life or they can write a good story, but they can't write both. Here it is. Kay Boyle, I have a visitor. Kay Boyle said that once a good story, Kay Boyle said once, I'm on page 167, that a good story is both an allegory and a slice of life. Most writers are good at one, not the other. And I felt like that was like, the dog being female was both funny, and in the way that you're saying, it was like a tiny little like metaphor, allegory for the whole book. Okay. Let's see. She's a master at bringing the body feeling into the scene. Every scene. Oh, I love that, Sue Ann. I think some of the humor kept it from being incredibly depressing. For example, I love the scene in the restaurant when her coworkers joke her about having sex with Oscar or Silas. Yeah, the coworkers, like Harry. There's a lot of humor in there. Would love to experiment with the use of animals. Geese almost as spirit animals. So good. Did you all have this as your last page?
Mm-hmm.
Why? That almost moved me to tears. The geese. I think because of that, the ending, like her mother as one of the geese.
I had it at the beginning too.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Oh, I do have that. Yeah, I do have that.
So sweet.
Yeah, it's really lovely. Okay, great. Well, okay, we have a challenge for you this week. And so this is just a fun, we had a challenge last week, which we'll share in a second, but I'm going to put this link in the chat. So this is a challenge of, here, let me put this in the chat. To play with this idea of a perception character arc, and I'll put the link of where to do this. So you would fill in these blanks. A character starts out seeming blank and evolves to see blank, and evolves to seem blank as the reader, to the reader, excuse me, I can't talk, but you know what I'm saying. Starts out seeming one way and then eventually seems another way to the reader. And this is where you can submit them, is at that link. and we will share them. Let me just make sure that link works. We will share them anonymously or not. We can include your name or not. Yeah, the link should work. But it might be fun. It'll be fun to see like all of the different ways we can imagine a character coming across as one way at the beginning of a story and then evolving to seem a different way. Do you want to give us an update on last month's challenge, Nicole?
We loved your 100-word stories that came in. They were so good. They were all so unique and so powerful and amazing to see how much was conveyed in 100 words or less. And so we will be sharing those as well. You'll be getting those in an email soon. We'll share them with all of you. So thank you for those who participated. It was wonderful.
We'll put them in a PDF. Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you, Harrison. We thought about reading a few aloud, and then we thought, it's just like a little bit too long, and we're already, we crammed so much in an hour. So we'll send them out in a PDF. And then we need to announce next month's book, Nicole.
We do. Before we announce next month's book, would you like to tell everyone how they can work with you if they would like to, Mary?
Oh, yes. If you have not taken my course, the 12-week book draft, which is actually a course bundle, it's that and a revision course called Revise Your Book the Right Way. You can check it out. If you don't mind putting the link in the chat, Harrison, it's maryadkinswriter.com/course should take you there. And you'll find all the details there. We have a great community. It's a really fun way to work on your novel. It's really for novelists or memoirists, but like long form narrative, not as opposed to short form.
Yay! Thank you so much. And our next Craft Talk Book Club is coming up April 16th, and I'm so excited to be sharing the book that we'll be reading.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out how to
get it. To line it up with my camera, but it's called "To Hell with It" by Dinty Del. Some people are here who've taken courses with me, and they know how much I adore Dinty Moore's work. He's the founder of Brevity Magazine. He's written a wonderful book on craft, and he's a wonderful instructor. And so this book is of sin and sex, chicken wings, and Dante's entirely ridiculous, needlessly guilt-inducing inferno. It's going to be a really fun read, I think. And there will be lots to talk about because he's got some visual elements in the book as well. And I'm just really looking forward to reading it myself. So
me too.
Look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, very excited. So that, thanks. Harrison put it in the chat. It's April 16th. So we have, you got a few weeks to get it and get reading. Oh,
and we also have the book after that, don't we, Mary? May's book for anyone who's interested.
So I am not ready to commit.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
It's going to be a thriller. I'll tell you that much. We're going to do genre next. So it's going to be a thriller. And I thought I knew which thriller, but then I just started reading another thriller that I also love. So now we'll see.
Okay.
But it will be May's book will be a thriller.
You'll keep us in suspense for the thriller.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It was so much fun.
Thanks for coming. Great to see you all. Thanks for the great conversation. We'll see you in April.
Bye.
Bye.